Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Worst Case Macchiato. This is episode 6. And today we have a special guest with us today. Say hello.
Hello.
So dramatic.
So we do have my sister on with us today for the case that I'm covering, and then it'll just be me and Madison for Madison's case. But today I'm going to cover the New York Zodiac, and he does a lot of things to do with astrology, and since my sister is kind of a savant in astrology, I thought it would be a good episode to have her on. How have you guys been lately?
I've been good. Sorry, I don't want to cut anyone off. But I've been pretty good. Just life. Just life. How about you, Madison?
I've been pretty good. Pretty busy, but
What are you
overall,
busy
no. Just work's been pretty crazy the last few days here and stuff, but things are slowly kind of getting back to normal. So
That's fair. Just for everyone who doesn't know, because I know you guys know that my sister Vanessa is a Virgo and Madison's a Gemini. I'm a Libra, the best zodiac sign ever.
yeah, okay, whatever.
Okay, Miss Indecisive. Anyway,
You talking to me or Stab?
wherever the shoe fits. So today I am going to talk about the New York Zodiac, which this is not the same as the Zodiac that is unsolved. This is a copycat of the Zodiac that happened roughly about 20 years after the Zodiac who was never caught ended his crime spree. So this starts all the way back in November of 1989. Shout out to Taylor Swift. A letter was sent to Brooklyn's 13th precinct with a message warning that people would be killed based on their zodiac signs. So the letter that he originally sent contained a circle that divided into sections that represented the all 12 zodiac signs on the zodiac wheel. I know Savanah knows what I'm talking about. So he divided it to show the different zodiacs on the wheel and the order that he would be doing them in. So on March 8th, 1990, Mario Orozco, who was a Scorpio, was shot in the back, but he survived. And the shooter left a zip gun at the scene that had a note wrapped around it, and it read that this is the Zodiac. So at the beginning of his crimes here, he pretended that he was the Zodiac coming out of a 20-year-long hiatus. And a zip gun is just a gun that has like some modifications to it, and it actually changes the groove on the gun for when the bullet is fired out of the gun, so it makes it more difficult for ballistics testing to be accurate. 3 weeks later, on March 29th of 1990, German Mondanastro, which is a Gemini,
Rude. How dare he kill the best first?
So 3 weeks later, he was shot in the lower left torso, going through his liver, and the shooter went through Montanastro's pockets and he pulled out his passport, kind of showing that he was a different zodiac sign than Mario. A month later, on May 31st, Joseph Preuss, who was a Taurus, he was shot in his lower back, hitting his kidney, but he survived the attack, but then he died in the hospital on June 24th of 1990. So the shooter left a note to the police and some of the news outlets with the 3 zodiac signs of the 3 victims and with the message Zodiac - time to die. And
Sounds
then, yeah, so he killed 3 times within a month and a half. And so on June 6th, Madison, your birthday, here we go again.
Yeah.
June 6th, 1990, identical handwritten letters were mailed to the New York Post, the production office of the CBS News program 60 Minutes, and then in the letter read, "This is the Zodiac. The 12 signs will die when the belts in the heaven are seen. The first sign is dead on March 8th, 1990, 1:45 a.m., white man with a cane shot in the back in the street. The second sign is dead on March 29th, 1990, 2:57 a.m., white man with black coat shot in the side in front of a house. The third sign is dead on May 31st, 1990, 2:04 a.m., white old man with cane shot in front of a house. No More Games Pigs, all shot in Brooklyn with a 38 RNL or a 9mm, no grooves on bullet. There were a lot of spelling mistakes. Every single time he wrote shot, he wrote shoot. None of the months were capitalized. And
I feel like that's a common thing, like, that we've seen over the cases that we've covered so far, is that their spelling mistakes are crazy.
Yeah.
In their letters.
It is painful. It was really painful to read that, to try to read it with proper grammar, but
I wonder if they, like, do it to kind of, like, give themselves away, but also make it, like, a slight challenge to, like, decipher their message fully, I feel like. Or,
well, I feel like it's to, like, misrepresent how educated they are or aren't.
That's what I mean, yeah. Like, either that, obviously, you never know. But
yeah, I just worded it better. You're welcome.
Yeah. So we'll throw back to the first episode with Terry Driver. He was not educated in the regular system. He was educated in, like, a group setting because he did have a lot of intellectual issues. So his was an actual representation of the fact that he wasn't the bestly educated. But like we talked about Dennis Rader a couple episodes ago, that he
PTK.
Purposely did it, right? So
yeah, I mean, at the time he wasn't super educated, but, like, during his crime spree, like, he was becoming very educated.
Yeah,
like, he was doing a lot of continued education.
So on this same letter, he also drew a circle that divided into sections representing the 3 zodiac signs, Scorpio, Gemini, and Taurus, which were, like I said, the zodiac signs of the first 3 people that he shot at. This told police that the attacks were definitely not random. They were very carefully planned out because he had to know their exact zodiac signs. So he would have had to, like, know in advance what their zodiac signs would have been. When the letters to the news outlet surfaced, the police connected the shootings and feared that they were facing another Son of Sam situation, where he kind of just had a situation of what he wanted to do and what he wanted to get done in a certain amount of time.
Super side note.
Yeah.
I was actually listening to an episode of And That's Why We Drink today, and in their episode, they were literally talking about Son of Sam today.
Oh.
So, like, that's the irony that we're actually talking about that on our podcast. Where the episode I'm on is literally talking about one of their fans sent them a letter, and there's, like, an icon, like, in the letter, and they couldn't figure out what it was, and then they discovered that it was the Son of Sam, like, emblem.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, so they were just worried that it was going to be kind of a repeat on some of that, which we'll obviously eventually talk about Son of Sam. But for those who know, it was kind of like that worry that you're going to have somebody constantly contacting the police once again and have a certain time frame they want to get things done in and then never attack again, at least as far as they planned. So they're worried about that. The effort to catch the shooter, the police called the Operation Watchdog. So they were trying to put police officers out there in normal clothes and try to see if they can find anyone kind of being suspicious. But obviously Brooklyn's a big area. There's only so much you can do. But during this time, the public started wondering if the real Zodiac had returned after a 20-year-long hiatus. And then on June 19th, 1990, Larry Parham, which was a homeless man who was a Cancer, was shot in the chest while sleeping on a bench in Central Park. He did survive the attack, and he told the police that a stranger had asked him about his astrological sign a few days before the attack happened. So this just showed that he waited multiple days to figure out what everyone's zodiac signs were before shooting them, which just added into his premeditation. And then another note was left at the scene with Larry Parham, and it contained the original zodiac symbol and a list of victims, and the shooter made evident that he was angered by the media's representation of him. Although the handwriting in the letters didn't match the original Zodiac, because they're 2 different people, he kept claiming that it was the real Zodiac in the letters, trying to take credit for all the murders that the Zodiac did 20 years ago. So he wanted credit for the 4 shootings that he already did, plus all the killings he did that the original Zodiac did 20 years ago. And
a Leo always needing all of the attention.
Yeah, exactly. Which is very known for serial killers in general, but he wanted credit for things that he didn't even do. It was... This dogs are barking, of course. That will be in the episode. I'm sorry. Nothing I can do about it. So the shooter then went on a 2-year hiatus, which the killer had originally planned. He wanted to take a hiatus kind of like the Zodiac did, because the Zodiac did have a short period of time where he didn't kill for, and then he went back to another attack. So now we jump forward to August 10th of 1992. Patricia Fonte, who was a Leo, was shot twice with a .22 caliber zip gun. When she grabbed him and a struggle ensued, he stabbed her 100 times, raising his body count to 2. So this is only the second person out of the 5 shootings that he did that has died. So
Damn.
yeah, so he wasn't very good at finishing the job, but he was good at instilling fear upon people. But the fact that he stabbed her over 100 times is so ridiculous. Like, imagine the amount of energy that had to go into, like, stabbing somebody that many times.
Yeah, no. Like, that's insane.
Yeah. And then the shooter again went on a hiatus for almost a year, and he shot 3 people in 1993. On June 4th, he shot James Weber, who was a Libra. Sorry, Savanah.
Yeah, dead.
He actually survived. So he was shot in the butt and survived.
Well, he shot him in the ass. What was he thing?
That's ass.
He shot him in the ass. And then on July 20th, John Diacone, a Virgo, poor me, was shot in the head at close range, and of course he died. And then on October 2nd, Diane Ballard, a Taurus, was shot in the neck, and the bullet missed vital arteries, but it lodged in her spine. She thankfully survived. However, she was left paralyzed for the rest of her life.
I was gonna say paralyzed.
But I mean, the fact that she was shot in the neck and she was only paralyzed is a
It's,
miracle
like,
to me.
super lucky, yeah.
And then it was also reported that he shot a man on June 10th of 1993, but the attack was never reported, and they have no way to prove that he was the one that did this shooting. And so since it also wasn't reported, the man that survived was unidentified. And then on August 1st, 1994, the New York Post received another letter from him, and it contained a list of victims from the 1992 and 1993 attacks, as well as a strange totem pole type code and the phrase, "Sleep my little dead, how we loathe them." And this entire time he's sending letters, he's claiming that he's killing all these people, but he's only killed 2 people. Oh, sorry, he's only killed 3 people out of the 8 that he's shot at this point.
Only 3, no big deal.
Yeah, well, obviously, like, killing anybody is horrible, but the fact that he shot 8 people in somewhat close range and he only killed 3 of them.
They need some target lessons.
I mean, good thing he didn't, right? But
yeah.
And then New York was once again thrown into a state of panic, but the shooter went on another 2-year hiatus. So he would kill multiple people. He would shoot at multiple people, go on a hiatus, shoot another couple people, go on a hiatus. That was kind of what he did for about 10 years. On June 18th, 1996, the police received a 911 call from a woman claiming that she was shot in the back during a heated argument. It says that up to 17 different police officers were rushed to the apartment building, and they set up on the street while the shooter fired at them from the apartment window. After several hours of standing off and shooting at each other, the shooter let up and allowed himself to be arrested. And when he gave himself up, he lowered 13 homemade zip guns in a bucket from the apartment's roof and kind of just like lowered it down to the ground to the cops. And when he was caught, when they asked him to write a confession for the shooting of this woman, he signed the confession with 3 sevens and the Zodiac cross. So he immediately became a suspect in the Zodiac copycat case because, like Savanah said, in typical Leo fashion, he wanted the credit. So he was just like, well, I'm already caught. I'm going to claim all the shootings that I did before. So the police took his finger and palm prints and rushed them to comparison with the case evidence that they had. And when searching his apartment, they found weaponry, pipe bombs, devil worship books, crossbows, knives, and also multiple bomb making manuals. That's the 10 years where he shot at a whole bunch of people. And now I'm going to go into who this New York Zodiac actually was. So the shooter was identified as Heriberto Eddie Seda. He was born on July 31st, 1967. So like me and Savanah said, he is a Leo. Seda was a native New Yorker and lived with his mother and his half-sister Gladys Chachi Reyes. He never dated anybody. He kept to himself, and he was serially unemployed. He made money usually by leaving open plastic bags in the return slots of payphones at vending machines, and then going back and collecting all that change every few days. He spent his free time reading magazines about signs and violence, as well as reading books about serial killers. Like, sounds like me, but I'm sorry. He idolized the serial killers Ted Bundy and obviously San Francisco Zodiac Killer, whom he viewed as a servant of God. When Seda was 16, he dropped out of high school when a firearm was found in his possession, illegally, obviously. And then his sister Gladys, as she was growing older, Seda became very mentally and physically abusive towards her, but this mostly stopped around 1987, which was only a year and a half approximately before he started the shootings. So he put all of that violence and anger that he had into shooting other people instead of hurting his sister. So very convenient around the time frame. So Seda's obsession with the Zodiac drove him to start planning a series of copycat killings, and his overall goal, he said himself, was to kill 12 people, one person for each Zodiac sign. He assembled a small arsenal of explosives and ammunition, and he crafted his own zip guns, the barrels of which he could change in order to avoid the grooves being matched through ballistics testing. So since he changed all this, he thought he was invincible because they wouldn't be able to match the ballistics to any gun if they were to use that gun later in the future and shoot it. But to each his own, they eventually did. But on March 10th, 1994, Seda was arrested for being in possession of a deadly weapon after police noticed a suspicious bulge in a jacket pocket that concealed one of his zip guns. So this was before the shooting in the apartment that led to his official arrest. But the police determined that the weapon wasn't functional and that Seda's public defender got all charges dropped and his arrest record was sealed. And then Seda interpreted this turn of events as an omen, proving that he was beyond consequences. So his multiple year hiatus was because he was going through this and he was like holding off until like a good time to start picking up things again. And then the attack on June 18th of 1996, which led to his arrest, was at his and his sister's apartment. So he actually got arrested in his apartment. He became furious with his sister Gladys when she brought her boyfriend to their apartment. And Sergeant Joseph Herbert said that he was mad at his sister because she was hanging around with the wrong people, drug dealers, troublemakers, and he didn't like that. Which is hilarious because he is that person. So,
well, I find, like, especially like a brother or like a family member, like, you know, like the saying of like I know how boys were. Like, I feel like he's kind of like, oh, I'm like that, and I don't want her to be around guys that are like me. Like, it's almost like he can kind of pick those kind of guys out because he knows what they're like because he's like that.
Yeah, that's very true. So he was angry at her because he didn't like her boyfriend, and he insisted that she kick him out of the apartment, and she said that she wouldn't kick him out. And then Seda grabbed one of his zip guns and fired into the wall. And then Gladys ran out the front door, but he shot her in the back. She hobbled into one of the neighboring apartments, called 911, and she left her boyfriend in the apartment with her brother. Surprisingly, he was only really used as a hostage. He was never shot at. He was never injured. He was kind of just in the apartment with him as he was having the entire standoff, like 2-hour standoff with the police. Which I'm surprised, like, him not liking him and everything like that, and he would shoot his own sister while he wouldn't shoot the boyfriend or even attempt to attack the boyfriend. It's very...
Especially considering he didn't like him.
Yeah, like, it's very odd that he would just, like, no slash wounds, no stab wounds, no trying to shoot at him but missed, no shooting him in the leg, nothing. Like, it was just, he was just kind of hanging around.
He probably already killed somebody in that zodiac sign. That's probably why.
Or just like wanted to react attention from like the public though too, because like if he's like the type of guy that, I know like other serial killers do this, but like taking credit for all these other things, he probably wanted that attention from the public. So he probably didn't want to kill him for that reason. Probably.
Yeah, like both of those, like what I was thinking was maybe, well, he needed leverage, right? Because there was 17 police officers outside. If he didn't have a hostage, they could have came right up, right?
Yeah.
Where if he has somebody who's completely innocent in all this and you just didn't like him and he's in the apartment, he can easily say, come through that apartment door and he's dead. So
yeah.
And he has they didn't know it at the time, but he also had explosives, so like kind of a good thing that he did have somebody in the apartment with him, because he probably could have set off any of the bombs that he had in the apartment building. So on June 24th of 1998, after a 6-week long trial that was presided over the Honorable Robert J. Hannafy, Justice of the State Supreme Court for the County of Queens, New York, Seda was represented by court-appointed attorneys David A. Bart and John S. Wallenstein. The case was prosecuted by Assistant District Attorneys Robert J. Masters and Raymond E. Shear. The prosecution presented testimony of 45 separate witnesses and introduced 150 pieces of evidence. And so he really wasn't that great in not leaving anything behind. He thought that since he had zip guns, that he was, like, there was no way he'd be able to be linked to the crimes, period. So then, although Seda claimed that he couldn't be linked to the crimes because of the grooves on the zip guns, they were still able to use tool mark evidence to link Seda to the attacks through ballistics. So even though it would take off the grooves, it would still make similar grooves. Like, even though it's not the same grooves, it's kind of still similar. He used the same types of guns. He used, like, all the rest of his ammo was the same. So, and then also he left fingerprint evidence behind, and then also handwriting analysis where they compared his letters that he wrote to the New York Post and his confession letter. They were able to say that, okay, well, this is his writing. And then there was also some damning evidence where Seda's DNA was actually found on one of the stamps that he used to mail the letter to the New York Post and to the police. So he literally licked a stamp or whatever and put it on there, or he licked the envelope closed, and they were able to get his DNA off of that as well. During the court process, he caused repeated disruptions in the court, making outbursts and often shouted at the judge. And he was eventually sentenced to 232 years in prison on 3 counts of murder and over 7 attempted murders, and for holding his sister's boyfriend hostage. And at sentencing, it was ruled that he was not eligible for parole for 83 and a half years, so he will not be eligible for parole until 2081 or 2082. So this will be when he's 113 years old, so it's most likely that he'll die in prison. Currently, he is imprisoned in the Clinton Correctional Facility in upstate New York, and it is noted that he spends the majority of his time folding origami animals, reading the Bible, watching hunting programs, and working as a porter. So he was a general porter, which means he either delivered clean laundry to inmates, passed out cleaning supplies to them, anything of this sort. So it's kind of just a typical prison job of, handing things out to the inmates that they were allowed to have for that day. In prison, Seda also began a sexual affair with Cynthia China Blast, a transgender woman who was serving a sentence for a gang-related murder and the murder of a child. And this is also his first ever relationship that he had in his life. And in later interviews, Seda said that he shot his victims because he believed that they were bad. They were evil people. I don't know, I think, like we talked about with the BTK case, Madison, him saying, oh, well, I was possessed by demons. I think that most people who are religious like to say that, it was some external force where, like obviously Savanah, like that bus one where like the one guy got decapitated, which also makes you terrified about public transit. He when he decapitated him and he was interviewed later on, he said that there was a voice in his head telling him that the person was evil and that he needed to kill him. And I think that a lot of people want to blame it on something else that's other than themselves to try to make themselves look better.
Well, I think when spirituality draws like a negative line is when people take anything to extremes. So when somebody is like too invested into something and like takes it like extremely far, and I just find like with religion and spirituality or like any kind of thing that you're kind of like, I don't know how to explain it, but like that you're a part of, like that's what I think would happen. Just people who are extremely religious like take the Bible almost like too seriously, and that's when it becomes a problem, where I think that's when they're like, well, the demons told me to, like, because God wanted it this way, and maybe these people aren't living up to the norms of what they're doing, and because they're taking such extreme, that's, I don't know, that to me is why they probably resisted that, like kind of like what you said, like not taking accountability for their own actions, but to them they don't see it as wrong because they're so invested and so passionate about what they're doing to an extreme level anyways.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that full-heartedly. I think that having a belief system, obviously, like it's a good thing. You know, you have to have something to believe in. But it's when they start using it as their complete identity where they lost, like they're no longer in reality with themselves and they don't, like they've lost their own identity. I think that's when it becomes a problem.
Exactly. That's what I said, just like
yeah,
a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, absolutely. So obviously, like we did talk about the fact that he was a Leo and that this is a sign that's very, you know, outgoing, like usually outgoing. But the fact that he was very isolated, like, do you think that it was because of his other signs that are in his chart?
So I have like written down a few things. So what I find like with Leos and my experiences with Leos in person, like oftentimes like Leo men are very outgoing. And I find Leo women are more shy at first, not all the time, but like it happens. But one thing that I noticed is that he has like a moon in Gemini, and my like what I've noticed with Gemini moons, I find like with fire signs who have like Gemini moons, I find because fire signs are known to be very outgoing people, very reactive people, life of the party type of people. And I find when they have like a Gemini or like a Virgo moon, because Geminis and Virgos work very similarly when they're like, they're overthinkers, they're in their heads, often very.
No, what?
No, listen. No, just listen. I often find like the Gemini moons calm them down. And so that to me, I think plays a part. And with Geminis, like I looked up Gemini moon real quickly, just have a refresher. So they often have a curiosity and enthusiasm for mental stimulation, which can like maybe like that could like could see why like with the killings where he just maybe he had to feel like a little bit more like, you know, like he's overstimulated in like the religious stuff, and he's kind of like taking out that with the killings, and it makes their lives exciting and busy. And Geminis are known to react often and too quickly, as well. See, look, can we all take a see this Gemini?
I'm literally just doing it because you're talking about it.
But anyways, yeah, sure, your excuse. But I find that Gemini's, I think that's why he's introverted. In terms of, I looked at his North Node. If anybody listening knows what a North Node and South Node is, your North Node is supposed to be what you work on in this lifetime, and then your South Node is supposed to be what your previous soul was supposed to work on in your most recent past life. So what I found out is North nodes and Tauruses are supposed to build a life for yourself. But you're also are learning to not live in somebody else's terms, so to do things your way only. And I think that showed with him becoming a serial killer, because he's going against like the norms. Like, he's not listening and going along with the government. He's doing things the way that he wants to do something. And in his previous lifetime, what he is trying to learn from is that his North Node was in Scorpio. It said that he had a lot of loss in many forms in his previous life with money, love, and relationships. And that in the past, you had many involved family members, lovers, or spouses that felt entitled to your time, energy, and resources, which makes me think about, like, with his sister. He held, like, a lot of, like, to me, unnecessary resentment towards his sister. But, like, maybe his soul in, like, a previous life, and with his life now with the Taurus North Node, he's kind of, like, trying to set those boundaries with family in life. So that's what I think. That's, like, the things that stood out to me in his chart that possibly could have made him the way he is. And then also his Leo Jupiter. It said bringing expansiveness, generosity, and the urge for justice. So for him, he felt like he was providing justice with what he felt was right with the Bible. And it said, like, it can seem good in writing, but all too often, the issues are forced too far. Like, they take things way too far, which would also be the killing. So, like, he has taken his religion too far, the anger and resentment he held towards his sister too far, taken it on other people to receive justice within himself, and then to do things the way that he wanted to do. So that's what I think. And then obviously with a Leo sun, I find that, like, they always want to be in the center of the spotlight. That's not a bad thing, but with him taking a lot of, like, credit for things that he fully didn't do, to me, it just seemed like he wanted that attention to kind of justify everything that he did. So that's my thoughts on him.
Yeah, I also just wanted to also note his Mars, because Mars is typically known as the most masculine energy in your chart, and is usually known as the most, like, kind of like violent oriented planet in astrology. And he had a Scorpio here, and Scorpio are very passionate, very fireball energy, even though they're a water sign, and they're very, like, explosive. And I also just looked it up, and it says that Madison, you weirdo. People born under people that are born with a Scorpio and Mars, they have a very intense and passionate spirit, but they also have, like, they have a strong desire and the power to set very strong boundaries, and they thrive on challenges. So trying to not get caught, trying to copycat someone and try to do it successfully, try to make sure that he couldn't be linked to ballistics testing. All of these challenges he wanted to overcome, and he was very passionate to overcome these challenges and to get away with it scot-free. And I think that the longer that they couldn't catch him, because it was kind of like 8 to 10 years that he was, like, shooting at people. So every year that went by where he wasn't caught gave him, like, almost a false sense of security, and, like I said earlier, like, in being immune to being caught for these crimes, which is, like...
And for, like, people who don't know Mars is, like, very based on, like, your actions and how you go about things. So, like, to me, like, that does make a lot of sense. Yeah, because it says Mars acts intensively and vindictively. Yeah, with the courageous action. So yeah, exactly. But it's very, like, action based on what you do. And yeah, like you said, like, Scorpios are very known to be very passionate. I find they're very misunderstood sign. Yes, Scorpios, I see you. A very misunderstood sign, and that's just because they're so passionate and have put so much love into everything they do and care. Like, they take it very seriously. So when things don't go, like the way that they had wanted, and this is like a trust thing, that's when the negative part of Scorpio comes out, because they feel so betrayed all the time, because they put so much love and passion into everything. So when someone doesn't do what they thought that they should do, that's the only thing. But
I feel like Geminis are misunderstood.
Well, every sign is misunderstood in their own way. Like Libras, like are very, like Savanah has obviously witnessed, is Libras are very seen as always being on the fence. So it feels like they don't ever have an opinion. Like even though air signs in general are indecisive signs, they like, I find that a lot of people misjudge Libras too. They will mold and kind of camouflage almost like a chameleon into any situation, and they aren't and they're afraid to speak up for everything, but that's not always the case. And same with Virgos, like they're like, people think that Virgos are very like by the book, everything has to be a certain way, everything has to be in order, which for me, other than me having that kind of thinking, my physical being is not like that. Like I am not physically organized. I have to keep a calendar or else I forget everything. So all these things, like everything is misunderstood based on, because you have to not only look at your sun sign, you have to look at all the other signs in your chart. All the planets make an effect. Your environment, your home environment, your school environment, all these affect who you are as a person.
Yeah, I just mean though that like Scorpio, I think as a general, is always known to be such this, like you see all the memes and everything, like are known to be these, you know, the worst zodiac sign in the thing. That's what I mean by misunderstood, because I think that there's just such loving and passionate people. It's just, and like just the way that they come off appears otherwise, but I just have a lot of love.
Yeah, because they come off aggressive, and like they almost come off as like super reactionary and defensive, but it's just because when you are so passionate about something, like if you love your job and someone says, and like you know that you're doing everything you can to do it correctly, and someone says, oh well, you're doing it incorrectly and I don't know why you would think that that's the best course of action and you're shit at your job, of course you're going to be defensive about it and everything. But they have that feeling for almost everything they do. So anything that comes to a social interaction, like if a social interaction, like especially working at a hotel, I've had Scorpio coworkers before. Like I love them, like they're awesome. But when an interaction doesn't go the way that they want it, and the guest isn't understanding, sometimes they'll go into the back area and be kind of explosive in the back, but not to them. But it's just because they're just like, well, I don't understand. Like I'm doing my job correctly. I'm like I said what I'm supposed to say and I'm still getting shit for it. It's not fair. And like they're very justice warrior type, if I had to like put them in a specific category.
That's fair.
Yeah, and I also find that the fact that he is a fire sun and an earth, like and an air moon, I find that combination is very like it makes sense why he's content with being by himself. Because like fire and air are compatible for the most part, and then obviously earth and water are compatible. So the fact that he was comfortable with being by himself, like it makes a lot of sense that way. That's pretty much everything that I had for the case. I just like I wanted to give time for any bit of astrology and just knowing a little bit about that. I know Madison isn't like up with astrology. She doesn't follow it like me and you do. But
you didn't like my yawn?
Oh no, I love that part. Yeah. Typical you.
I genuinely had to. I genuinely did have the yawn, but I was also like, it's kind of fitting.
I was also talking at the end of one of the episodes. It was the BTK one, because I was talking about that he was a Pisces. I think he was a Pisces, and I was saying, because like remember when I was talking to you, Savannah, about the 4 signs, like that they're the most likely to be kind of serial killers and stuff like that.
Yes.
So he was a Pisces, and he obviously killed a lot of people, and he tortured a lot of people. And so I was just like, obviously Madison's like, well, I don't know anything about that. But
I just think Pisces, like, if you've ever seen a Pisces mad, people, you'll understand.
Yeah.
They can be, they're like one of the more harsher and colder signs when they're mad. Can be kind of a little, you know, they come off the wrong way a lot. So I'm not really surprised.
Yeah, well, and since they're also a water sign, like their killings are mostly made off of emotions. So the fact that let's just say he did believe that actually these people are evil and it wasn't a cop out, he would be so upset by the fact that these people are evil that his emotions are driving him to kill them. And it was the same thing with John Wayne Gacy, is also a Pisces. So when he would interact with a guy and they didn't, reciprocate the advances that he was making, he would get upset and kill them. And then with the BTK, like, he had a lot of issues growing up, and those played on his emotions and the way that he felt about himself. And so he took all that anger and like feeling like he didn't belong and everything like that, and wanting to torture himself into torturing other people. And I think that just like all of their killings are made off of just emotions mostly alone. I don't think I've ever met a Pisces that wasn't emotional. Like, I think that they're one of the most emotional signs in the entire zodiac. I would eventually love to talk about like that whole the four grouping there. But it is, for people who know astrology, it's anyone who's a mutable sign. So it's the signs that end a season. So Pisces rounds up, they round up kind of like the end of winter going into spring, and then you'd have the Gemini rounding up the spring going into the summer. The Virgo is ending the summer going into the fall, and then you have the Sagittarius rounding up the fall going into the winter. So all of those signs, what I like to say is they end the season, they end a life. It kind of just like, it's just like that typical theme of they're ending something, they're ending a life, they're ending a situation. They're like kind of, they want the end of something, like whether the way that they started it or anything like that. They have a goal, they want to finish it. So it's kind of like, that's the way that I kind of find it. Like, you have some of the most prolific. You have John Wayne Gacy's a Pisces, Ted Bundy's a Sagittarius, Ed Gein is Virgo, and then you have Jeffrey Dahmer's a Gemini, BTK was a Pisces. So it was like a lot of the most prolific ones that a lot of people know about are in these four signs, and they do go a far way of killing a lot of people, unfortunately. And the way that they're killing, like the type of killers they are very similar. So like John Wayne Gacy and BTK are both emotional killers. It's usually a kill of passion, where Sagittarius is like Ted Bundy. When they kill, because they're known as charismatic most of the time, and they're very adventurous, and they're very like socially like out there, so that they can easily sweet talk somebody and then they'll turn on a dime and kill them, because that's what Ted Bundy did. He was a charmer, right? And then you have Ed Gein, the Virgos, who are very meticulous in the way that they plan things out. So those are the people who typically have like a kill list, and like stuff like that. And then you have the Geminis, who are typically are typically one thing in one moment, and then because they're also known as the twins, they kind of turn on a dime and they're actually something else. So any of the ones who are Geminis will be like that. Shit. Like, it's the same thing with Robert Picton. He is a Gemini, and so he would be a typical farmer by day. He'd party a lot and everything like that, but he was a super aggressive person. And same thing with Jeffrey Dahmer. He kind of just felt like a very awkward guy, kind of just like not really understanding his place in the world, but he was also very aggressive, which his was also like he didn't want people to leave and stuff like that. But
Jeffrey Dahmer is like a more sad case, because like I do agree, where I feel like if his upbringing was better, he wouldn't have turned out the way he
did. Yeah,
that's why a lot of people like kind of simple, like he nothing right with what he did, but I feel like him out of like all the serial killers, I feel like gets most people's sympathy because of that, because he did have like an upbringing, a severely big abandonment issue problem, rightfully so.
Yeah, he was highly neglected, like highly neglected.
He could have been someone that could have been like saved if he was just treated better. So that one is like a sadder case. What he did was completely wrong with that, but like then you like kind of like, well, like his upbringing, it all makes sense, you know?
Yeah, Charles Manson, like he was neglected a lot by his mom too, and he moved around a lot. And he was going between, like, whenever his mom was in jail, he was going to different family members and stuff like that. So it was like his home life being extremely like uprooted all the time, and nothing ever was very secure, which means that he wasn't getting the attention that a child would normally get. Like he was very much isolated and everything like that, and so it makes sense why him forming a cult around the fact that he is the main person at the helm and everybody pays attention to him, like, and he is seen as a god, right? He, like, it makes sense because he didn't receive that attention growing up.
I think like if we can like all try to like remember too, like a lot of these like big serial killers all grew up in like a time, like, and therapy is still a very touchy subject now. Like it's starting to become a lot more normalized, has a lot of work and progress to do still. With women it's not as bad, but I find it's still a taboo subject with men. So I think like back then too, like these guys like had nowhere to like throw their emotions either. Like there's no, like they felt like, I feel like some of them probably wouldn't be aware that they needed to talk to someone, especially since it's very like, you know, back then they're like, no, there's nothing wrong with you, you're fine. But I think that like if they like therapy, like I know not everyone agrees with therapy, but like therapy could have been like, you know, a game changer with these guys, because like these guys are all bottling up their emotions, and a lot of it's all from like resentment from when they're growing up, when like something as little as therapy could have made them come a long way. And I'm only saying this to put out recognition into the world that therapy needs to be improved, because it can save a lot of these type of things from happening, I think. So I just want to throw that out.
It needs to be more normalized. It needs to be more accessible. Having situations where therapists and all that, like the ones that are covered by the government, at least in Canada, you can only get in once every 3 weeks. And like that, and you only get like a 45-50 minute session every 3 weeks. So it's hard to actually make good progress in a therapeutic situation. And the ones that you'd be able to go to more frequently, it is upwards of like anywhere between like 200 and above per session for a 50-minute session. And that is not, therapy is usually also not covered in benefits when people get benefits.
I was because my benefits don't cover therapy, and like because it goes like with what you said, is that like I think that we're at a point in life where therapy should be considered healthcare to me. Like I think that should be under more of like a healthcare benefit, because like even though we can't see what's happening, like it's still some type of suffering. Like there's proven of serotonin imbalances and all these other chemicals imbalanced in the brain. I just don't understand what's taking so long to make that more like accessible. To make that, yeah, like I don't find it's like easy, even with it being like given to you. Like there's some free ones from the government under, like for us, Ontario OHIP. I find like they're not easily accessible, and oftentimes those ones you have to be kind of referred to from a doctor, because like I don't even think you can really even find the free ones online, and it's hard to tell what's real and what's scamming you, because I know there's some talk about certain apps in the phone that are claimed to be super effective from like social media people. And I just think that like it shouldn't cost me like almost $200 for one therapy session, because like now you come to the problem where a lot of people can't afford that, kind of with what you were going with, like what you were saying anyways. Like I think like it's not affordable, it's not covered, and the ones that are covered are the hardest to find unless someone were to tell you or to refer you to those therapies. And obviously back in that time, like obviously doctors aren't going to recommend therapy, but even now, even though it's more accessible than what it used to be, it's not really that accessible. And that's why people aren't comfortable with doing it, because something that should be so easy is like to get into is so difficult to get into. I've gonna put it out there, had my first therapy session, but it took me, I don't know, 2 years talking to you back and forth, Vanessa, before I finally did it, because it was like a confusing process for me. Not that I didn't want to do therapy, but it was like trying to figure out what to do and how to get there and there's not a lot of instruction, not a lot of info on how to do that. And it's come a long way, but it's not even close to where it needs to be. Like, I don't know.
Well, and also, like, going back to, you have to be recommended by doctors sometimes. I was only given the free therapy, like government sanctioned therapist, because my doctor believed that I needed to talk to somebody about stuff that was going on. And that was the only reason why I got a free one. I know that, like, when I went to university the first time, right out of high school, the mental health, like, accessibility at that university, because, like, there were mental health counselors obviously on site, was extremely hard to get into. You had to be recommended by a doctor. You weren't allowed to seek out mental health services or get in relatively quickly if you didn't have a recommendation from a past therapist or doctor. And it was also a 6-month waiting list. And if I need help that moment, the 6 months waiting list is stupid. And I think that when I went to Fanshawe, they had an incredibly really, like, they had a really good mental health program set up where they had regular sessions where people can get in every week if they needed. And also, if you didn't have an appointment but you were having a really bad day, you can go to the mental health center that they have on campus, and you just say, like, oh, I really need to talk to somebody, like, I'm done with today and I need somebody to talk it out with me. And they have, like, a list of people who are on call that they'll call, so you can have, like, an emergency mental health therapist session. And I think that their mental health program should be mimicked by all the other institutions, especially when it comes to, like, post-secondary schooling. Like, that needs to be, like, a regular occurrence. But I think that it needs to be, like, and also going back to things aren't a part of our, like, when people say, oh, well, Canada has free healthcare. Yes, but no. Like, we
pay for it.
Yeah, like
it's just hidden.
Like it goes to our taxes, but what our taxes pay for in healthcare doesn't cover everything. Like, it covers if you need a surgery, if you whatever, but obviously ambulance costs, like, that is all out of pocket. Your medication, unless you're under 25 and you're covered by OHIP, that's out of your pocket. Your eye care is out of your pocket unless you have, and, like,
eye care isn't covered by OHIP at all.
No, it's not. And then also, dental care is not covered by OHIP. It's not covered in our taxes for our quote-unquote free healthcare. So that's out of pocket. And not that many jobs give benefits.
Offer benefits, yeah.
Like, I work in the hospitality industry, no benefits. And any of the hospitality, like, locations that I've worked in, none of them have offered benefits. So, like, I find that most of the ones that do offer benefits are ones that have unions and ones that are considered a quote-unquote career where you have a salary. If you are an hourly worker,
they don't always.
Yeah, and if you're an hourly worker, you wouldn't get benefits, period. So, like, unless you had a union. So, like, it's really difficult. And even then, if there is a union, sometimes the part-time employees that are part of that union also don't get benefits because they're a casual employee. And, like, it's makes it really difficult for people. Even if benefits did start covering these mental health services, a lot of people don't get benefits. So, and even then, they're not going to cover every single member of your family gets a session every week or every 2 weeks. They're not going to, they give you a set amount where, okay, who's going to go in this month? Me, my husband, or my partner, whatever, my son Timmy, or my daughter Sally. You know, which one of the 4 is going to get a therapy session this month? That's what it would be if it was covered in benefits. And I think that it's not, because like even the dental care, most benefit programs only allow like 2 cleanings a year, which dentists even say that it's recommended that people should be getting cleaning every 3 months. Kids are only covered until obviously a certain point. Like if they don't go to school right away, like out of high school, like if they don't go to post-secondary, they're immediately no longer covered by benefits at the age of 18. If
I was gonna say, yeah, it's like after you're done college, like you're not able to.
And that's only if you went to college, university, or post-secondary right out of school. So
yeah, they'll cover you till 25 if you're in school.
Yeah, so like there's still like a short amount of time frame, and even OSAP, like when you get government funding for schooling, they even say like you have up until 6 months to like start making your payments, because they know that as soon as you come out of school, you don't have like a set job yet. Like while you may be working at a grocery store or anything like that, like you don't have a set job to be able to pay back, but nothing else realizes that you don't have a job, you don't have benefits, you don't have any of these other things to be able to do this. Like obviously, Madison, like you understand because you have glasses, and Savanah does wear glasses sometimes when she drives, but for someone who needs glasses all the time, like I don't have any coverage to get new glasses. So whenever my prescription is done or my glasses break, I am absolutely screwed on trying to get a new pair.
Yeah, I just broke my sunglasses, actually. Speaking of glasses, they broke the other week, and they were $500 to get those. Like, I do obviously wear glasses and they're prescription, but like, it cost me $500 to get sunglasses. Like, that's crazy.
Bizarre.
Like, the company gave me... What, sorry?
Sorry, what makes it cost $500? Like, you know what I mean? Like, obviously, like, I just don't understand how glasses can be... I know.
The prescription.
But, like, I understand that. I know that. But, like, what exactly, like I'm curious on how much it actually costs them to make everything and how much they're billing people, because I think $500 for a pair of glasses is ridiculous. Like that's so much.
Yeah, well, just the frames alone, like if you without the prescription in them, like if you go to like an actual eyeglass place, a lot of these frames start at like $189, $200, $250 for the low, like the lower quality frames, the non-high brand glasses, right? Like
my frames were $2 something.
Yeah, and then it's roughly around $100-$125 per lens, and it's going to be more if your lenses are 2 different cuts. Like so if one side of your vision is 1.75 and the other is like 225, it makes it quote unquote more difficult in the process of creating the glasses because it's more customized, that like they can't just regularly produce them. Like if everyone's eyes were the exact same prescription, I don't think it would cost as much as it does. But I think that the fact that lenses, like the frames are like upwards of $200 each is ridiculous. When you can buy a normal pair of sunglasses, the exact same style of sunglasses, just without a prescription in it, for like $50.
Yeah,
that's not fair.
The pair that I have, and they don't sell replacements because the one arm broke. The company ended up giving me a discount because my warranty was up on those glasses at like the end of May, and they literally broke the beginning of August. So like literally just out of warranty, and they did give me a deal on buying a new frame. So they only charged me $104, but like it was still like I had to pay $104 for them to swap out lenses, basically. Like it was just super annoying.
Yeah, to put your lenses in different frames. Yeah.
I mean, like it's literally the exact same frame, but
well, yeah, but they had to like then the frame that they had, they basically gave it to you, like.
Well, they didn't give it to me because I paid $500 for it 2 years ago.
No, but I mean, like they gave it to you at a discount for the frames because the frames were like over $200, so like probably roughly around like a 60% discount or 40% discount, roughly between there, 40 and 50.
Yeah, and then like my lenses each were like
just
shy of $200 each, like each lens.
Yeah, just for them.
And then they would have been another $80.
The
they would have been $1. Yeah, they would have been like another $80. Like when I first ordered them 2 years ago, it would have been an extra $80 a lens if I wanted them to be like polarized. But I was like, I can't afford that. So I would have been like between three pairs of glasses, I was like $11 or $1,200, including my vision test, which is $160, which is crazy.
Which is so unfair because it's not my fault that I can't see. You know, like
Yeah.
it's not
All
something
the
that
things
I could have prevented.
of all the things I suck at seeing and I suck at freaking breathing.
Oh my gosh, I
It
feel
ain't easy
that.
being wheezy, bro.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah. Anyways, this is my first Canadian one I've done.
Ooh.
Yeah. I found a lot
Interessante.
of interesting ones. Yeah. It's close
Yeah.
to home too, actually.
This is the second one now in a row that you've strayed off of our list.
Yeah. Just going going out. I mean, this was supposed to be my solo, but I definitely did not have enough time to prepare for that. I mean, I did. I just slacked off on it, and so we're gonna push that episode back a little bit. So
Yeah, it's all good.
we're just gonna do some swapping. It happens.
That's the way the wind blows.
Yep. So today I'm going to talk about the murder of Brian Smith. So, uh, Jeffrey Arenberg was born either October 2nd, 1951 or December 30th, 1956. Um, Super weird, but when I was looking this case up, uh, different websites had different date of births for him, but I'm leaning more towards 1956 being his date of birth based on how old he was at his time of death. So,
Okay.
um, yeah, I think he was. I think his actual birthday is December 30th, 1956, and not October 2nd of 51. Anyways, um, I just found that weird that there was multiple dates of birth and they're like varied by 5 years. If it varied by like a few months, I was like, okay, whatever. But
Yeah,
it's kind of a
it makes it weird when it's more than a year difference.
yeah, for sure. Okay, so he was born in Upper Northfield, Nova Scotia, Canada, which is located about 100 kilometers southwest of Halifax. He was born into a farming family that raised cattle and sold produce. He was the fourth of five boys. He dropped out of school in grade 9. He later uh, found work in being a scallop fisherman in Digby, Nova Scotia. He had been displaying signs of schizophrenia for a while, but was never diagnosed until 1990. At some point, he began to believe that his ex-wife and her family were torturing him by broadcasting his thoughts on the radio and TV. He was hospitalized in 1990 after causing a disturbance at a courthouse in Bridgewater, Nova Scotia, during which he demanded they start an investigation claiming his former in-laws, were taking his thoughts and selling them to Hollywood movie studios. He also believed that his former in-laws and the government were importing drugs into Nova Scotia, and that they were out to get him because he was trying to expose their activities. Um, After the disturbance, what, sorry?
I was like, oh, like that's so weird.
Yeah,
How does one express your thoughts through the media? Like, how does someone take your thoughts and express them on the media? Like, just as opinions, or
yeah, I guess, like, I mean, I don't know, like, obviously he has schizophrenia, so, like, he's,
it sounds
I
like
guess,
paranoid schizophrenia specifically.
yeah, so, anyways, yeah, I don't really know how that works, but
Yeah.
again, when you have, like, a mental illness involved, it's definitely different. Yeah, so after the disturbance, doctors at South Shore Regional Hospital, um, he told them at that hospital that he was going to either burn his in-laws' house down or he was going to kill someone if the broadcasts continued. He then demanded to be discharged from the hospital, and they granted his request,
What?
despite him having, yeah. So they released him anyways, and we're like, yep, Bye, see you later.
Oh
You're
yeah, by
good.
the way,
Even
I'm
though
either
he
gonna
made threats.
commit arson or I'm gonna kill somebody, but hey, can I go out anyway? How
Literally.
stupid.
Yeah. So they discharged him. I mean, like, we're talking this is like the 90s where like none of this was really like super predominant. Like, it was not something, super talked about again. Like, they didn't really know kind of what was going on. But, anyways, yeah. So in January of 1992, he physically assaulted the manager of the Bridgewater radio station, citing messages. They were broadcasting messages in his head. He was found guilty and fined $300 or 2 weeks in jail in the earlier incident, but he never showed up to his trial. Then he skipped town and moved to Ottawa, Ontario. Authorities determined it wasn't worth it for them to track him down. So, like, assaulted someone, like, was found guilty, and then they were like, he skipped town, and they were like, not worth it. We'll leave it be. Like, he literally made threats that he was going to burn his in-laws' house down or kill somebody. He's now assaulted somebody, and you're like, it's fine. He doesn't need to do the jail time. Just assault somebody and move to a new town, and we're not going to go after you.
You know the Pikachu meme where he's like gape mouthed and like people always are like, oh, they let them out or whatever, and then they turn around and do it, and they're like the like Pikachu meme.
Yeah.
That's what it feels
Yeah.
like right now, because it's just like, oh, he said that he's gonna commit arson or kill somebody, but we let him out anyway, and then he goes and turns around and does exactly what he said he was gonna do. Like, that's literally, oh. So, like, what did you think was gonna happen? It's so stupid.
Yeah, right? Okay, so let's get into what he ended up doing. So, on August 1st, 1995, so literally like a month before my brother was born, Arenberg went to the studio of CJOH TV, the CTV television station in Ottawa. Witnesses said he parked his car roughly 60 meters from the front entrance of the studio and pulled a long-barreled .22 caliber rifle from his trunk and fired 2 shots. One hit and killed CJOH's longtime sports anchor, Brian Smith. Arenberg had gone to the studio because he believed the station was broadcasting messages in his head. Smith was the first broadcaster he saw and recognized coming out of the building. Following the shooting, police recovered a list of other Ottawa media personalities in his apartment. An official at the City Press Club noted that he had previously thrown Arenberg thrown him out of the club 3 times for causing a scene and demanding to see multiple people on his list. He was also turned away from Parliament buildings on several occasions, which is crazy to me. I mean, I'm glad, like, Parliament, like, turned him away, but, like, I have spent a lot of time in Ottawa, like, as you know, but, like, this is crazy that this happened there.
This is why the White House has gates way outside the perimeter, not even close to the White House. And I think the fact that, like, you have such highly represented political figures going in and out of the, like, the House of Commons, the Parliament building, all that, like, it should be a lot more protected than it is. Even now, I think it needs to be a lot more protected than it is.
Well, yeah, and especially because there's a case that, like, we'll cover later on that actually is something that happened on Parliament Hill here in Ottawa. Later on, I'll cover that case, and that happened, like, I want to say that was, like, 2014 or 2015, so, like, fairly recently. And yeah, like, it just kind of is crazy, but in Canada, like, you can walk right up to the Parliament, like, you can walk on the hill and, like, everything, you just obviously can't go inside, but you can even do guided tours inside if you wanted to, but yeah, it's just crazy. Like, because I go to Ottawa, like, a lot, and, like, it's not super far from where I live, but, like, it's decent distance, but yeah, anyways, just crazy. This hits home.
Yeah, exactly.
So, he was found not criminally responsible in Smith's death due to his mental condition. He was remanded into custody of Oak Ridge Division of Mental Health in Penetanguishene.
Penetang.
Yeah.
I love Penetang.
That's funny. It's such a hard word to type. Like, that's
Yeah,
unnecessary.
that's why people call it Penetang. Okay, they don't want to have to say and write out Penetang machine.
So, fun fact, I have never heard of Penetang. I've never heard anybody call it that. But anyways, Smith's murder led to renewed calls in Canada for strengthening of gun control legislation. He also apparently had been, and it doesn't say for what, he had also previously been sentenced to a mental institution, but he never reported to the institution. So, like, if they would have, like, followed through with this and, like, made him, like, went out and found him and, like, made him go, like, it's highly likely that all this could have been avoided.
Wait, so they told him that he needs to go to the mental institution, and they just never made sure that he actually made it there?
Yeah, like, he never showed up. Like, he never reported when he was supposed to. And I guess there was, like, no follow-up, or, like, there was nothing, like, that I could find that talked about if there was a follow-up. Again, Canada's, like, privacy laws and, like, criminals have, like, so much rights still in Canada is kind of crazy. But yeah, there was nothing else that I could find. And it didn't even say, like, what that he had been previously sentenced to a mental institution for. So, not really sure.
Well, knowing now he's a paranoid schizophrenic, right? Like, why would you think that he would willingly go there himself? Like, it just doesn't make any sense.
So my thing is he a paranoid schizophrenic though? We'll get a little bit more into that.
Well, that's how he's portraying. So.
Yeah. So an inquest into Smith's killing recommended that there should be more public protection and significant changes to the Mental Health Act of Ontario.
As we were talking about the last case, the case that I covered.
Yeah. The result, Bryan's Law, was passed on June 21st of 2000 by the Ontario legislature. So what is Bryan's Law? Bill 68, often referred to as Bryan's Law, named after Bryan Smith, the act allows for a community treatment order by the attending physician. This order is intended to provide comprehensive treatment outside of a psychiatric facility. So basically, allowing people to get treatment for mental health issues and stuff and psychiatric issues without being admitted to a facility. So like family doctors and doctors at hospital, at just, regular hospitals could treat them and try to help them versus just being like, you go to a psych hospital and we can't do anything for you. We can just send you to a psych hospital and that's it. So it just allowed for more, like, all medical doctors pretty much to be able to treat it if they had to.
What year was this Bryan's Law passed? It was the late 50s?
2000.
Oh, it was 2000. Oh, Jesus. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah, like the murder happened in 1995, like literally like the month before my brother Devin
this guy
born.
was born in the 50s probably.
Yeah, 56.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I got the time frames mixed up. Yeah, it only was passed in 2000s?
I mean, the murder happened in 1995, so
that's crazy though, like to think that like anyone before the 21st century, literally if you had any mental issues you had to go to, like, you would be, if you had like severe mental issues, you'd be put into a mental, like, overnight, like, constant.
But you also have to look at it as like yeah, that was like a thing obviously, but like look what we did to, people with developmental disabilities and like all that kind of stuff, like those centers. I think that like our healthcare system isn't improving fast enough, like, to keep up with everything that's kind of going on. But it's crazy to think that, regular mental health practices of treating mental disorders also was like, okay, let's just throw them into a random asylum and just keep them away from the public, but also, let them out even though they say they're going to kill people. Like, it's just,
it's very like it's almost like disappointing to learn that
Yeah.
like it was only, you know, in the 2000s that a bill was passed that allowed like outside asylum help when it comes to mental health. And same thing
Yeah,
with
and
like and with like intellectual disabilities and stuff, the fact that it takes such a long time, and it was only like that's also a reason too where like it's so disappointing to know that your country's been around for like a couple hundred years, right? And because like we were officially a country in like 1867, to know that we've
yeah,
been around for 150 years as a official country, and to know that this only happened within the last 20 years, like it's really disappointing.
yeah, the last 23 years, yeah. But they also like the thing too, like it took a murder for that to even be a thing. Like, had this murder not happened, like who knows if this would even still be a thing today? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right? Like, it literally took a murder for this to come about, and like as we'll learn a little bit later about like Brian Smith's history and stuff of how much of a notable figure he was and stuff. So if he wasn't who he was, like none of this probably would honestly be a thing today if
That's
he hadn't
true.
been
Yeah.
murdered.
If it was just a one-off murder, some random Joe on the street or something, it definitely would not have been a, you know, Joe's Law or anything like that. That's for sure.
Yeah. So Mr. Arenberg had already been granted a, a conditional discharge in May of 2004. So like didn't even wasn't even in the facility for 10 years for this murder, which required him to report to the center once a month, take regular urine tests, not consume alcohol or non-medical drugs, not own a weapon, and he had to live in Barrie with his brother. Fun fact. So he had to move to Barrie
Which
to
is
live with his.
literally only like literally 15, 20 minutes from Penetang.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Okay. I was thinking of when I think of
You
like Penetang, like I think of like um uh New Tecumseh, like that area. Like I think like further north, but I didn't realize it was that close.
yeah, like you actually pass through Penetang every time that you come down towards my mom's house.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Just through the highway, you just don't pay attention to it. That's all.
Fair enough. That's true. I don't pay attention. I just drive. Um,
It's
but
around
yeah, so he was
it's around Oramadante. Like it's around that area, so
okay. Yeah, gotcha. Okay. Anyways, yeah, so he was required to live in Barrie with his brother. During his time there, it was said that he completed his community college during this time. So he graduated from community college during this time. So like to me, that's Georgian because that's the only college that's there, and like we're talking
mhm,
2004.
right.
So like that is crazy that you have a paranoid schizophrenic who took somebody's life, but is good enough to like take a community college program and graduate. Like,
Well, my sister Savannah, when she was at Conestoga, one of her first roommates was a schizophrenic, and if she didn't take her meds, sometimes like my sister would wake up to get a glass of water, and she would just randomly be standing facing a corner. And the fact that like obviously on medication she was fine, but those days that she forgets to take the pills or whatever, like it was terrifying
yeah,
because
no, I can
like
just imagine.
so like she dropped out after the first semester, or she moved out of that apartment building. I think my sister and them complained because it was creepy. Like you would wake up in the middle of the
Yeah,
night and she's like standing in the corner, like staring down the direction of the hall where your bedroom was, and it's just weird. Like it was just so discomforting for them. So
yeah, no, I don't doubt that. Um, hmm, anyways, oh, I guess that little snippet should have been after, but my bad. So we're gonna kind of go back a little bit.
okay,
So
yeah.
in 2001, the Ontario Review Board granted Orenberg a 72-hour release. so he could be out for a little bit. Then he had to go back and kind of stuff. He applied for a full conditional release in 2004. The review board granted him an absolute discharge from the mental health center in Penetang in November of 2006. So he's still, like, as much as he was living with his brother, like, he wasn't fully cleared until November of 2006, which meant that he was free to live where he wanted without restrictions. He had 0 restrictions upon his release in 2006.
Okay.
Yeah. According to radio station CFRA, the board heard that he no longer possesses a significant risk to the community and no longer suffers from the symptoms of paranoid schizophrenia.
Magically.
Right? Magically. So, post-release, in November 29th of 2007, Arenberg was arrested after punching a U.S. Customs officer in the head in Buffalo, New York at the Peace Bridge International Crossing. According to officials, Arenberg attempted to enter the U.S. on a commercial bus as a passenger, but was denied entry due to his past convictions. He was arrested and spent 2 years in jail and was released September 8th, 2009. In a submission to the Ontario Review Board, a doctor said Arenberg had good insight into his illness, but would likely suffer from psychotic symptoms if he stops taking his medications. As of early 2014, Arenberg had moved back to Bridgewater, Nova Scotia. There he claimed to no longer be mentally ill and admitted that he did not take the medications prescribed to keep his schizophrenia under control in an interview with the CBC program, The Fifth Estate.
So according to the people that you mentioned before that fact, where they said he had a grip and understanding of his mental psychosis, yet he moves to a different province or back to Nova Scotia or whatever, and he claims that he doesn't have a mental illness anymore, but he has a good grasp on his mental illness. Yeah, for sure. Just wanted to make sure that I heard that correctly. So
claims he's magically cured and never took the medications that he was supposed to.
Man, I need to go to this Penetang mental illness hospital, clearly.
Right?
They're miracle workers. Like, oh my god.
Yeah, clearly. So I actually watched, like, The Fifth Estate. I know, like, they're not the most, like, reliable program out there, but they actually did one on one of the big murders that we'll do later on. That was actually local to where I live. But yeah, anyways, moving on. In November of 2014, he went back to Ottawa, claiming that he had been run out of Bridgewater after the CBC interview aired. Upon getting to Ottawa, he was staying at a shelter with $15 to his name, awaiting his Canada Pension Plan disability check. And then it was reported on June 26th of 2017 that he had passed away on June 13th in Ottawa of a heart attack at the age of 60 years old. So that's pretty much, like, the story. But so I'm kind of, like, because he's, like, magically cured, claims he never actually took meds, like, that would explain, like, the murder portion, like, if he actually did have it, but then for him to be magically cured, like, attend college with no issues if he claims to never have taken meds. It just kind of, I don't know if he actually did suffer at all or not.
I don't know, because, like, if he was freaking out that his family was leaking his thoughts to the public, like, he could be doing it as a ruse just to get out of a mental institution, period, or that's what he could have done. Like, it could have went either way. Like, it could have been he was faking to be good so he can get out, or he was faking to be insane so he didn't have to go to jail. Like, it could have been either or. I don't think there's any scenario other than those two. There's no way that he goes somewhere for less time than he would have served jail for murder, and then he's magically cured with no need for medication. Like, that's just, like,
quite literally.
Like, I don't even know where to begin. Like, like it was a like you. I mean, you weren't wrong. Like it was. You did. There wasn't that many details for that case. I mean, typical Canadian law fashion. Like you can't do anything. Like even old war records you can't access until it's 100 years after the war, right? So like
Yeah.
all those from World War I, like we're finally only just getting all the like the forms that they all filled out and everything like that.
Mm.
Like we're only now being able to access those. So
Yeah.
like
So
we're not going to know anything about this further, any of these materials, if it's ever leaked or anything like that. It will not be released until like literally 2095. So
yeah. So I'll just quickly go through who Brian Smith was.
oh yeah.
Um, so Brian Desmond Smith was born September 6th, 1940.
The
He was a
Virgo.
Canadian. Yeah. He was a Canadian professional ice hockey player and sportscaster. Smith was born in Ottawa. He was the son of former professional ice hockey player Des Smith and brother of former professional ice hockey goaltender Gary Smith. Smith was a professional hockey player from 1960 to 1973, playing in 67 games in the NHL with the Los Angeles Kings and the Minnesota North Stars during the 67-68 season and the 68-69 season. He later played for the Houston Aeros of the World Hockey Association during the 72-73 season. He played overseas kind of in between those times as well. Following his hockey career, he was a broadcaster for CJOH-TV in Ottawa until 1995, when he was shot and killed by Jeffrey Arenberg. Brian was just 54 years old at the time of his murder. Also, Jeff Arenberg was 38 when he committed the murder. Brian Smith died at the Ottawa Civic Hospital 18 hours after being shot. His death was a shock to the Ottawa sports community. The Ottawa Senators honored him with a Smitty 18 patch on their jerseys, which they wore during the 95-96 season. And there's actually a banner hanging in the rafters at the Canadian Tire Center in his honor. And they actually renamed their press box the Brian Smitty Smith press box in his honor, which I've actually noticed because I've actually been to the CTC many times. I've watched a lot of hockey games there. And I actually have noticed that banner hanging in the rafters many times, and I've never really known. I thought it was just like a former player who had passed away, but I didn't realize like the story behind that banner. So it was kind of cool to dive into that the uh the story behind that banner and his significance to Ottawa.
So Arenberg or whatever, he didn't have any ill will against Brian, seemingly. He
No,
just
he was selected just because he was the first broadcaster that walked out of their office that he recognized and knew, and he just open fired.
ugh, bad luck Brian, that's all I gotta say. Poor guy.
Yeah.
Like
But again, like
that's
he was a former professional hockey player, which if he wasn't like a former professional hockey player, like who knows if Brian's Law would have ever become a
yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
And it is possible that, it would have become a thing as the result of somebody else, but like we don't know. But he was a pretty big name in Ottawa. So
Yeah. Well, like I think that if he shot any broadcaster going out of there, I think that it probably would have happened knowing his past. Like he was literally released from a mental institution after saying that he would harm somebody or damage somebody else's property. Like I think like the fact that he was admitting to, you know, being unlawful and doing illegal things, I think that police officers have to go like, how does this happen? Like how do you let, like we do our jobs as best as we can to keep these people off the streets. And if they are ruled as being insane or clinically insane or whatever, and they're supposed to go to a mental hospital, they're supposed to be there until they get better or they're stable enough to not be a threat to society. And for him to admit that he would either kill somebody or literally commit arson on an occupied home, which is like a tier 2 felony. Literally, there's no way that he should have been released, like, at all. Yeah. Like, if he was claiming to be the way that he was at the end of his life, where he was saying that he was magically cured and he no longer had any symptoms, and he didn't claim this, then I'd be like, okay, like, maybe he's just a really good actor, right? But
and like it wasn't like a mental institute that like he made the threats at and then they released him. It was just like a regular hospital, from what I can understand.
Even then, though, like, anything where you know that somebody is going to be committing, like, and they are admitting that they will hurt somebody else or commit arson, which is a huge felony, like, they should have called the police right away. Like,
100%. Like, that should have been like, yeah, we're gonna place you on a mental health hold, which, again, based on this, I don't know when mental health holds and like that, Form 1s and Form 3s became a thing, which are like, if you get like Form 1, like you have to spend a minimum 72 hours in like the mental health wing of the hospital, and they determine whether you're fit for release or whether you're gonna stay in their care, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Not sure when that became a thing.
But even if it wasn't a thing, like, I think that, like, they should have attempted to try to, stall him a bit while someone at the nurse's station called the police, being like, hey, this guy, like, there's nothing we can do to legally hold him here, but, like, he's saying that he will either kill somebody or set somebody's house on fire. So I think that we need somebody here. Because this is, like, hospitals now obviously have, like, security people, like, security officers and all that, like, in hospitals. But, like, before Brian's Law, I don't know if they don't have those mandatory holds, did they have security guards back then in hospitals? I don't know. I wasn't alive, so I have no idea.
Yeah, same. My brother wasn't even alive yet, and he's the oldest of all of us, so
I would say let's ask our parents, but again, I'm pretty sure that your mom was more worried about pushing your brother out of her, rather than looking to see if there's any security guards. So
yeah, I don't think she really paid attention. She doesn't really pay attention to much in general. Love you, Mom. I don't think she'll ever listen to this.
I know. I told my mom about the podcast multiple times, and I think she forgets every time I tell her. So it's okay.
I've told my mom, I'm like, yo, like I'm going to record an episode. Do not yell at me. Don't do anything. Like, leave me be. I'll let you know when we're done.
If you need me, text me, and I'll answer when I can.
Yeah, and then like the other day when we were recording, my dad walked in, and I was like mouthing to him. I was like, get out, and he was like, what? I was like, just get out of the room. Like, we're recording. Like, we are busy. Like, it was like right close to the end of our thing anyways. Like, we weren't, I think we were just kind of like, whatever.
I remember because he came down to tell you that dinner was ready, yeah.
Yeah, which normally he texts me, but anyways. But yeah, it was kind of funny, but.
I think that was last episode. That was last episode.
Yeah, I think so.
It was because, like, nearing the end of that, we were talking about how Popeyes was going to in your town, right?
Yes, we are getting a Popeyes, which I am so excited about, but also, like, super dangerous because it is way too good.
Literally. We, my mom and Walter tried Papa John's pizza for the first time the other day, and they absolutely love it. It's really good pizza, though.
Oh, yeah.
So.
I've never had it, but also, pumpkin spice is back at Starbucks today.
That's what Savanah said yesterday. She's like, pumpkin spice is back, and the first thing she did was get a pumpkin spice ice cap.
That's funny. I do not like pumpkin spice stuff, so
neither do I.
So Starbucks advertisement says re-entering our pumpkin era. I'm like, oh my god, not off to Taylor Swift. Like,
I love Halloween, but pumpkin spice is just not something I'm into.
I like fall vibes, but like I don't care about Halloween. But apparently, I'm a goblin for Halloween this year, so I don't know what
You're a
goblins
goblin?
dress up as. Apparently,
A goblin dresses up as a goblin, Madison.
no, but like, what is even a goblin? Like,
Look up Pinterest
anyways,
inspo ideas.
Hunter told me that I was a goblin for Halloween, so he told my mom that my mom is going to be a bee.
Oh.
He told my dad that my dad is going to be. What did he say that he's like? Papa's gonna be. Oh, I don't even remember what he said. I forget what he said that my dad was gonna be. He said that his mom was gonna be a zombie.
Oh.
Devin. So his dad,
Yeah.
is going to be Frankenstein. He's gonna be a ghost. So
Frankenstein
Hunter's.
and a zombie. That's how he sees his parents. And then he sees your
Yeah,
mom as like a bumblebee.
yeah.
And you're a
And
goblin.
then yeah. And then so
That's
it gets
cute.
funnier. So he said he's gonna be a ghost. We asked him what kind of a ghost he was gonna be. He said a ghost that flies.
Heck yeah.
And you're 3.5.
No
But
walking
anyways, it's so
ghosts.
funny.
only
Yeah,
only flying ones.
screw walking, flying only. Yeah. So he's gonna be a ghost, and then we asked him what Gigi, so our grandma, his great grandma, was gonna be for Halloween, and he literally said a witch.
You said a
Witch
witch?
for
A
Halloween,
witch? Oh my
apparently, according to
goodness.
Hunter. So, um, yeah. She was like, "What? No!" And then, anyways, yeah, it bugged me that I can't remember what he said that my dad was going to be for Halloween, but it was pretty cute.
Aw.
He just decided all of our Halloween costumes. So
Well, he's finally at that age now where like he remembers a lot more. So like this is his first like I think this is gonna be like the most exciting Halloween for him.
he remembers everything but my name.
Oh, of course, yeah,
He's
yeah,
like, "Whoa!" He'll like look at me. He'll be like, "Whoa, who's that?" I'm like, "You're a
yeah.
little shit."
And he sees you
Like
a lot.
he knows who I am. He just cannot remember my name. I'm like, "Am I Aunt Sarah?" He's like, "Yeah, Aunt Sarah." I'm like, "No, I'm not Aunt Sarah." Like Aunt Sarah's at your like other grandma or grandpa's house, whatever. Your Aunt Sarah's like freaking 12. Like, no, I am not Aunt Sarah. And then he'll like be like, "Ma mère." I'm like, "I'm not ma mère." Like, mom is ma mère. I'm
Yeah.
like, "I'm not that old." Like, Jesus. But yeah, he
My
just
goodness.
cannot remember until like people tell him, they're like, "Is that Aunt Madison?" And he's like, "Yeah, Aunt Madison." And I'm like, "You little shit."
Yeah.
Yeah, like he knows everybody's name but mine. I was like, "Rude, child." Like, I spend the most money on you. I spend a lot of time with you, and you don't even know my name. I was like, "Rude." Like,
Also, I have read half of the memoir of Terry Joe.
oh really?
Yeah,
You got your hands on a copy?
yeah, I got a free copy. So
Did you
I'm
go to the library?
no, I looked up a free PDF online.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, so I'm reading it through Apple Books right now. So I'm like halfway through it.
Nice. I've been on a reading slump, so like I have not read in like forever.
Well, I want to
But
finish reading it before I go back to school, so
that's fair.
because
That's
I
fair.
won't have time.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fully fair.
Thank you for listening to episode 6 of Worst Case Macchiato. If you ever want to get in contact with us, either to suggest a case that you'd like us to cover in the future, or some things that you think that we might have missed, or just to put your input on something, you can either DM us on Instagram at Worst Case Macchiato, or you can email us at worstcasemacchiato@gmail.com. We also release episodes on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts, as well as on YouTube. So they're kind of mostly all on the main platforms that people listen to podcasts that I know of. If there are any others that you know that a lot of people listen to, just let me know and I'll see what I can do to get those released on those platforms as well. Just so we know that our listeners can listen at the best platform that they use the most often, just to make it easier for everybody. Well, as always, we will see you in the next one. Bye!